The day Boston drowned in syrup. Imagine this. The year is 1919. America is brimming with change. World War I has just ended, the roaring '20s are about to explode, and Prohibition is just around the corner. But on a typically chilly January afternoon in Boston's North End, an unthinkable catastrophe is about to unfold. It wasn't a fire, a bombing, or a blizzard. It was a tide of sticky, dark, sweet industrial syrup. This is the true story of a disaster that sounds like a fever dream, a disaster where a massive wave of molasses, traveling faster than a subway train, obliterated everything in its path, claiming lives and forever changing the face of American corporate negligence and legal precedent. This isn't just a quirky historical footnote. It's a terrifying lesson in greed and the unimaginable physics of a sweet tsunami. Part 1. The Sweet Threat. It was 12:30 p.m. on Wednesday, January 15, 1919. The air in the bustling waterfront district of Commercial Street was unusually mild for a Boston winter day, hovering around 40 degrees Fahrenheit, 4 degrees Celsius. This unexpected warmth played a silent, deadly role in the tragedy to come. The neighborhood was a gritty, working-class hub, a mix of brick warehouses, dockyards, and tightly packed wooden tenements where Italian immigrant families lived. Right in the heart of this urban sprawl, dominating the skyline, stood a colossal structure, a steel tank owned by the Purity Distilling Company, a subsidiary of the United States Industrial Alcohol Company, USIA. This tank was a monster. 50 feet tall, 90 feet in diameter, it held over 2.3 million gallons of raw cane syrup. Why so much molasses? It wasn't for baking cookies. This raw cane syrup was the primary feedstock used to produce industrial alcohol, which was a critical component in munitions, solvents, and most importantly, given the impending prohibition, consumable liquor. USIA was racing to distill as much as possible before the 18th Amendment became law. The tank itself was a monument to cheap, hurried construction and gross professional indifference. Built in 1915, it had leaked almost from day one. Residents in the area, particularly young children, had grown accustomed to collecting the slow, sweet seepage that ran down the side of the tank and pooled at its base. They called it a honeydew of sorts. The manager, Arthur Gell, a man whose experience was in accounting, not engineering, had ignored all warnings. When a structural engineer first inspected the tank, he noted that the plates were too thin, the steel of questionable quality, and the rivet holes were improperly aligned, causing unnecessary stress. Gell's solution to the incessant leaks? He had the tank painted brown to hide the dark stains, and simply filled it up. Days before the catastrophe, over 300,000 gallons of new molasses, freshly delivered and relatively warm, had been pumped into the tank, further stressing the already compromised structure. At 12:28 p.m., a deep, ominous rumbling echoed across Commercial Street. It was initially mistaken for an elevated train derailment, common in the area, but the sound rapidly escalated to a terrifying, deafening roar, a sound witnesses would later describe as like a machine gun firing a hail of rivets or the shattering of heavy timber.
The massive tank, stretched beyond its breaking point, had failed. In an instant, the steel shell exploded outward. The catastrophic release of 2.3 million gallons of molasses created a massive dark brown wave that was estimated to be 25 feet high. The wave moved with impossible speed, estimated at 35 miles per hour, a wall of dense, viscous fluid with a weight and density far exceeding water. It was not a slow-moving flood, it was a kinetic weapon. The initial impact was devastating. The wave struck the elevated railway structure, ripping a girder clean off its base and derailing a passenger train, sending it crashing into the street below. Next, it pulverized the city's fire department Station 15, crushing the building and trapping firefighters inside. Horses, carriages, trucks, and people were swept away like children's toys. The density of the molasses, nearly 11.5 pounds per gallon, combined with its velocity, with the key to its destructive power. It was like being hit by a liquid battering ram. The force was so immense that it twisted steel beams, crumpled brick buildings, and lifted a 2-ton motor truck and flung it into the harbor. The destruction lasted less than a minute, but the resulting chaos and horror were prolonged. The molasses, exposed to the cold January air, began to cool rapidly, and the viscosity increased. People who were not killed by the initial impact found themselves stuck, trapped in a rapidly hardening, inescapable tar. They drowned, were crushed against debris, or slowly suffocated in the thick, sweet sludge. The aftermath was surreal. The scene was utterly silent, save for the desperate cries of the trapped and injured. 21 people were killed, and over 150 were injured. The city of Boston, founded on puritanical discipline, was covered in a thick layer of a sticky, sugary mess, a sweet grave that covered over 2 city blocks. The recovery effort was a nightmare. Rescuers had to wade through chest-deep molasses, often needing fire hoses to wash the syrup off victims to even identify them. The air was thick with the overwhelming, sickly sweet scent of the syrup, a smell that lingered in the neighborhood for decades, becoming an almost mythological part of Boston's urban lore. The disaster quickly became a national scandal, leading to one of the most prolonged and complex legal battles in U.S. history, a case that would involve over 3,000 witnesses and change how American corporations were held accountable for negligence.